Hey, everyone in. Let's go. Huddle up on 3. 1, 2, 3. Huddle up.
No one, and I mean no one, comes into our house and pushes us around. This is your game now, gentlemen.
Washington, they'll be calling this the save.
The words that D.C. fans have been waiting to hear since 1974. The Washington Capitals are the 2018 Stanley Cup champions. Oh, wow!
In your life, have you seen anything like that?
And now, welcome everyone to the Huddle Up podcast.
And the only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys? Yeah!
Good evening. Welcome back to the Huddle Up podcast. It has been a very long time since we've gotten a Huddle Up pod into your feed, and tonight will be a little bit different because first off, we weren't actually live, and second off, Dave is not with us. Dave and I are working on some ideas to bring the pod back here as we have little to no sports right now, and we're inching closer and closer to summertime and whatever that means. Potentially, obviously, football season in the fall. So we are working on ideas to bring you content throughout the current situation. And first and foremost, we sincerely hope that everyone that hears this is safe, is healthy, and is being smart and safe about everything in the world today. Just remember that we are on Facebook and Twitter at Huddle Up Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Big Jim Sports. Make sure you check out our home network, NGSC Sports, at ngscsports.com. We also stream daily at leibsports.com. That is LEEIB sports.com. But the best place to get just the Huddle Up podcast is, of course, subscribing to us on all of your podcatchers. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on any podcast subscription service if you are not an Apple user, and we are also now on Spotify. So if you go to Spotify and search Huddle Up Podcast, you will find our logo there. Just click on it, click follow, and go from there as well. So I did say that we do not have Dave with us tonight, but we do have one of my longtime friends here in the podcasting world, Ernest Christian, from the Earnestly Speaking podcast and the Take 3 Wrestling podcast. And I have done his show numerous times. And I believe, Ernest, this is the first time you've actually been on Huddle Up. Is that correct?
First time on any of your platforms, Jim. Okay. How you doing?
I am doing really well. It is long overdue to have you joining me on one of my shows. So it is certainly good to have you. We'll give you an opportunity to plug all of your stuff here before we let you go. Now, the topic for tonight, before we dive into it, I have one little side thing because in the world of podcasting, there was some news today that I thought was kind of interesting. I think you were actually the first person that I saw post about it. But tonight we're going to talk about something that obviously, we're all aware of what's going on in the world. We don't need to give a long verbal history of the last 2 months of our lives. But, we don't really have sports right now. Obviously, we're beginning to come out of the complete blackout of all live sports, and we'll talk about that. But you and I have talked about, and I know you've talked about it on your show. I've thought about it, like just how much do we miss sports? And you and I have been talking back and forth about the idea of putting something down into a recording on this topic for a little while. So we'll dive into that here in a minute. But the big news in the podcasting world today, and I know I recently got all of my shows uploaded to Spotify, is that Joe Rogan is going to be moving exclusively his podcast exclusively to the Spotify platform, and it's kind of big news. And I saw somebody just tweet about it just a little bit ago that this could almost be similar to when Howard Stern went from terrestrial radio to satellite radio. Like, this is potentially like a game changer in the podcasting world, don't you think?
Oh, it is. Joe Rogan right now, you can really consider him the modern day Howard Stern in a lot of ways. Like, this podcasting realm that's, it's still fairly, I don't say new, but it's still niche in a sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Rogan is the lead dog. Like, Joe Rogan is like I would, if you pick like 3 or 4 main like personalities that do podcasting, who you think of? Think of Bill Simmons. You think of other political, whatever you want to call it, personalities over there. Joe Rogan is in that conversation. Joe Rogan is the guy. It's kind of like a diamond in a rough, like a diamond piece of an entire platform. And the fact that he's going to Spotify, it's big news but it's also something I would say that it's a long time coming. If you've been following the trend the last 6 months to a year, Spotify has really doubled down on the podcasting platform, which I really like because I'm very passionate about the platform, number one, and the fact that Spotify is actually willing to, really, stick the claws into this thing. Joe Budden is a really popular rapper from the early 2000s. He has this show. His show was really big as it was before, and then now it's on there as well. Jamel Hill's show is on there as well too. And then the big one a few months ago was the Ringer, Bill Simmons' Ringer
right.
podcast network. Which, if you know Bill Simmons' platform, Bill Simmons is there isn't a guy I think that's more passionate about the platform podcasting than Bill Simmons, and he has what I believe like 14 or 15 podcasts all alone,
right,
on his platform, and Spotify gobbled all that up, and they're probably the biggest podcast network right now going, in sports and entertainment. And then you got Joe Rogan, who is the creme de la creme right now of the medium. This is huge. This is huge. Now, a lot of folks are worried about, okay, well, now who's going to pay for it? Right now, no. Right now, the only inconvenience for people like me, really, although I do have Spotify, I don't really. I only use Spotify for particular podcasts I listen to, like Jamel Hill's or Joe Budden. But I will, obviously Joe Rogan's on there now. I will listen to Joe Rogan on there as well too. But the only inconvenience right now is that you have to get the Spotify app to listen to it.
Yeah, I've never really been much of a Rogan guy, and there's not a podcast that I listen to right now that is like exclusive to the Spotify world. So. I have Apple, an iPod or iPad and an iPhone. Right. So, everything that I get comes through the podcast app via Apple. It's super simple. But like for me, I know, from a 3 Count standpoint, 3 Count Thursday, which is my wrestling show. We've had a lot of questions. People like, they'll be following a lot. They'll catch our live videos on Thursday nights, and they're like, "Are you guys on Spotify?" And I'm like, "Okay, I kind of got to look into this because, it definitely does seem to be a trend in the podcasting world in the last 6 months to a year or whatever. That's where a lot of people get their feed because I know a lot of friends that they have a Spotify premium account for music. That they use to listen at work or wherever, in their car, because obviously, even if you don't have an unlimited data plan, music doesn't take up a lot of data on your cell phone plan or anything like that. So having a premium account for a small fee, and then when you incorporate podcasts into that world, it's a real simple place to just go and grab and do everything. So that's why this show. The 3 Count Thursday and my new show, Discussions with a Nobody. Now we all have all of those feeds have a Spotify feed. because, you know, it's the way to go. And now when you're starting to see some of these bigger names focus into that platform, you know, it's a smart idea to be on there. So yeah, it's definitely something that jumped off the page.
It's definitely the hottest platform going. Like, and again, you know, when people are still don't. A lot of people are still new to the podcasting world. Like, these platforms aren't necessarily where you upload your shows. These are third-party platforms. So what I do always, I've been doing this for a decade now. Any platform that's available, I'm putting the name up and putting the show up there for free. Why not? You know, it's really all you're doing is giving them a platform to other potential listeners who may not listen to Apple Podcasts or listen to maybe Google Podcasts or they listen to Spotify or listen to Stitcher, whatever it may be. But the difference here too, what's going on here is that Spotify is now starting to get their own exclusive taste. In other words, you know, now starting September, if you want to continue to listen to Joe Rogan, you can only sell on Spotify. That's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This trend started also with another company called Luminary. Now, Luminary was charging $8 a month for their service. I know a lot of guys like Michael Rappaport. I know Arian Foster's podcast went on there for a little while. I remember David Axelrod, who was Barack Obama's former campaign, I think, assistant, whoever it may be, and they had their podcast, was very popular on there for a little while too. But it was kind of like a paywall in a sense. You had to pay for a certain amount of money to get access to it. You know, Spotify, at least for the time being, is still free, which is good. Although I not to scare folks here, but I'm speculating based on my own opinion here. I wouldn't be surprised if the next 2 to 3 years they'll be charging for the services. Honestly.
Yeah, that's always a big question is and maybe just particular shows like the Joe Rogans, like the Jamil Hills, like things like that are your quote unquote premium content, which if you can tie it into a Spotify premium account for music and anything like that, then then you can probably almost justify it. Like I know for me, I always was a firm believer, like the idea of satellite radio. I'm like, I will never, ever in my life pay for radio. And then I bought a truck a couple of winters ago, and it came with a 3-month trial, and I started like listening around, and I just so happened that like 2 weeks after I bought the truck, my brother and I had gotten tickets to. We live in Central Pennsylvania. We got tickets to a Notre Dame hockey game. In South Bend. So we had like, an 11-hour drive out and an 11-hour drive back. And boy, did that Sirius satellite, satellite radio subscription come in handy when you're driving through countless radio markets that, whatever you're listening to, it just stays with you. And, then I've really gotten into Stern, and I've gotten into some of the comedy channels, and 2.5 years later, I'm still paying for Sirius satellite radio. So like this idea of, nobody's going to pay for podcasting. And I never have, I'll be honest. Like there was a couple of shows that I've listened to that they've gone to different platforms where it's been a pay platform. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not paying. The one of them was, I don't even remember what the show was now because it's been a while, but like it was a $6, it was like $6 or $7 a month, which it really isn't that much.
For the show itself, or just a platform?
To listen to that show itself. And I was like, there's no way I'm paying $6. And again, $6 a month, it really doesn't add up to be that much in a year's time. But I'm like, man, and I walked away from that show but if I can listen to everything on a platform for a certain amount, and there's stuff on there that I listen to, then it's really not that far-fetched at this point.
Well, and that's the risk to also a lot of people are going to be taking in the years to come. Like, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. So when Luminary launched their platform, and they started, picking away at different podcasts I listen to, Arian Foster's podcast I used to love. Michael Rappaport's podcast I used to love for a long time from the beginning, and they made their shows exclusive to there. It wasn't that I was not going to pay $7 a month for the platform. Is that I didn't. To me personally, I'm a podcast connoisseur, like not just as a content curator, but also as a listener. So to me, it was like, well, I wouldn't mind paying for it, But in another way, it's like, okay, well, since you're going away now, I have other things I can listen to now since you're not going to be around to take away from my time. You know what I mean? So I haven't really been strapped for podcast in the same way, just because of I'm not going to pay for the platform. But that's something that curators, if they start making names for themselves and they get posted the option to make their product exclusive, they could, while they may make money on the front end, definitely doing it, they could also lose some listeners who are not willing to pay out the money. So there's a balancing act here that podcasts are going to have to really play with here, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
you risk losing an audience versus the money, or vice versa. That's going to be a tough part going forward when these things come up.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a very similar, in a way, similar model to what Sirius did when Howard went over, because they didn't have a lot of subscriptions when Howard first made the switch. And now, I mean, Sirius has bought out XM, Sirius has bought Pandora. Like, Sirius is a monster in the audio and the content world. So, but it took some time for them to get there. But if you can hitch your wagon to the right horse, Sirius did, and potentially Spotify here with Joe Rogan. I mean, you look at the stats on his YouTube channel. We're talking 2.5, 3 hour YouTube videos of him just talking to people. The amount of hits that generates. This may be the right horse to generate a switch to a Spotify podcast platform. And so it is definitely going to be a very interesting thing for podcast listeners, but especially for people like us who create. Obviously, we're not on the level of those guys, but as pod creators, it is definitely an interesting thing to watch over the next 6 months, 12 months, and a couple of years.
And you mentioned YouTube also. They took a big hit here too, because from what I was reading, in September, all the videos, the full episode is going to be also only at Spotify as well too. So the videos that will no longer be on YouTube. Now, the only good thing I will say about this for YouTube, for me anyway, because with Rogan, I'm a big fan of Rogan, but I don't listen to every episode in full. In other words,
right?
Like, if there's a interesting person from the political world, sports world, definitely music world, I'll pop in. But what Rogan has mastered too, which I do in my show as well, is that some of the shows that what people you may not care for, but they create these good clips. Joe Rogan has an account on YouTube called JRE Clips, which is clips from these episodes. So you may not want to see the entire 3-4 hour marathon, but you may have like 5 or 10 minute clips of interesting parts of the conversation for people you may not know about, and that will still be there. From what I'm told, the JRE clips will still be there. So at least you still have a. If you're not willing to go the Spotify route, there's still a crack in the door to at least see what's going on with the little clips there.
Yeah, and that's honestly the really the only places I've ever really gotten where I've listened to a couple full episods here or there, but more times than not, it's been on those clips. But yeah, it's definitely
depends on the guest.
Yeah,
like James Hetfield a couple years ago. Obviously, I'm a Metallica diehard.
Mm-hmm.
You got my attention. Mike Tyson's on a couple times. One time, I got my attention. The big guys there, you got my attention. But there's some people I don't necessarily care to listen to 3 hours of. But if there are interesting clips out there that they talk about on the show, I'll check it out on the YouTube.
Yeah. So it's definitely gonna be something to watch. Now let's just transition and we'll kind of dig into some of the stuff with individual leagues and whatever. But obviously, it's been a couple of months now since the sports world has pretty much shut down. I mean, you go back and the NBA shut down on March 11th, NHL shut down March 12th. Major League Baseball made announcements, in mid-March. Golf the same time. They shut down the Players' Championship on day one. The XFL has met its demise because of this, and obviously, there's some ugliness with Vince McMahon and Oliver Luck, and the back and forth legal battle that is ensuing. But and obviously, we'll talk about golf and NASCAR resuming and where some of these other leagues are at. But like the first question, it really is, I'll give a little bit of my thoughts and then we'll give you. But how has your life been, like, not just like in quarantine, but like without sports? And for me, it's been kind of this weird like up and down, because at first, I think I was so freaked out by everything that was going on and how rapidly everything was changing. And, are we going to be shut down? Are we not going to be shut down? Because the way Pennsylvania did it, it was like in regions. So like the eastern part of the state with like Philadelphia and areas up closer to New York State shut down first. And then like slowly but surely it worked into my area, and then the whole state went locked down. So like it was gradual on that front, but like, it was crazy and how rapidly things change, and you hear all this different stuff on the news, and people start projecting number of cases, number of deaths, number of this, number of that, and you kind of get wrapped up in this cycle of everything that's going on that for the first, I think, like week or so, I didn't even really notice that sports was gone. And then as you begin to settle into whatever this version of life is, then as they start watching, like, every night I'd flip over to NHL Network or NBC Sports, and I'd find like an old hockey game or, an old this or an old that. And it's kind of like, this is kind of fun digging back into some of the old stuff. But over time, it's like I miss it. And, I am looking forward to when things begin to come back. But, like, I'll be 100% honest. Like, I don't know that, and this will surprise a lot of people that know me that hear that. Like, I don't know that I've missed sports to the level that if you would have told me 6 months ago, hey, 6 months from now, there's going to be nothing. I would have been like, well, what am I supposed to do? But I've surprisingly not really been that way.
Yeah. Same here, and people get shocked when I tell them that. Like, when, I'm a sports junkie, obviously. I love football, definitely love the NBA, love hockey, love baseball, all that. They get shocked. But I got to tell you, and this is going to be something kind of weird, because it's not that my love of sports has gone down in the last year or two. I still love it. But, I'm 40 years old now. I have a wife, I have 2 kids, one kid's in school now, and, all that. So as you start getting older and maturing on certain things, like, it's not that sports is no longer a priority, it's that it shares now priority with other things.
Sure.
I'm into politics, I'm into this, I'm into that. So a lot of times, I have, balancing out the whole thing. So I was telling my wife the other day, that, the last football season last year, 2019, that it felt, that was the first, it felt to me for the first time that I didn't feel invested. Now, people will say, oh, you're a Giants fan, they suck last year. I go, well, no, not really. It doesn't matter. Football's football. I'll watch no matter what, whether my team's good or not. But for the first time last year, I didn't feel invested in the season the same way I've been in years. That doesn't mean I'm not watching it. It just means I don't feel like I have to watch every damn game. I don't have to watch, the 1 o'clock slate, the 4 o'clock slate, Sunday night football, Monday night football, and Thursday night football. I can take breaks and feel okay with it. I think what broke me more than anything else, was really slowed me down across the board, all sports, was when Kobe Bryant died. I'm an NBA diehard, James. That is my favorite league, my favorite sport. I am NBA junkie.
I would say you to the NBA is probably what the NHL is to me.
Correct.
Like in baseball,
Correct.
like I'm invested somewhat, but I'm an Orioles fan, so it's hard to get totally invested. And I'm a Cowboys fan, but it's 20 plus years of heartbreak. I'm a Notre Dame fan. They last won a national title when I was 3 years old. But hockey has always been like my number one. So yeah, I feel you there.
And particularly the NBA, even with nostalgia in current day, it doesn't matter. But and by the way, the NBA season was phenomenal this year. It was wide open for the first time in a quarter century, in my opinion. When Kobe died, though, in January, that slowed everything up to me. That really, and I'm not saying I'm a Kobe Bryant like stan or like he's one of my favorite players. Obviously, I love him to death. But it's just that tragedy really put into perspective for me in a lot of ways. And about appreciating the moment and all that. It forced you to slow down. It took me a while, like his death, it took about 3 weeks before I started watching basketball again, to be honest with you.
Wow.
And then by the time we got to watch basketball, COVID-19 comes around. So I was already somewhat on the decline anyway before this thing, even the pandemic became a thing here in the States. So it wasn't that I was like, depressed that, I had all these games I'm watching, all of a sudden a league pass, all of a sudden, it's gone now. I'm like, oh my God. I was right on the way down from last fall going through Kobe's death and then now into the pandemic. Now, that doesn't mean I don't miss sports. I do miss sports to some degree. But for me, this pandemic is taking on a whole different level of appreciation for me across the board with life. This pandemic has allowed me to slow down. My wife and I have a very happy schedule in terms of like how we work with the kids, all that. We haven't had a vacation in quite a while. We haven't been able to really slow down to take care of the things in the house, all that. So this allowed us to really hunker down and take care of the things in the house we need to take care of. Spend time with our children, spend time with each other, whatnot. So sports, not having sports there was good to not have a distraction. Number one, I'm a big TV show guy too, also as well. A lot of shows I'm behind on. Trying to catch up a lot of shows, and whatnot. So it's more so not that the sports is that it's the stopping of sports has allowed me to actually take some stock in life.
Sure.
Now, right now on May 19th, I'm starting to miss it a lot more now. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's kind of been a weird, weird development. But I get it, and it's crazy to think, like, how long ago does Kobe's death feel? Like,
oh my God!
Like that was the day of the WWE Royal Rumble. Like me and the 3 Count guys,
same day, yep,
were on the air when the news started breaking about Kobe's death because Tim, one of the guys on 3 Count, is a big basketball fan, and like so one of his buddies texted him that Kobe died, and like he at first was like in shock. He like dropped his phone on the table and like didn't say anything for like a minute or so, and we're like, what's going on? We didn't know what was happening, and then he said it, and we started looking at things, and it's like, holy crap! And then I get off the show, and I found out that day my grandma had fallen. She was out to lunch. She had fallen. She was going to the hospital. She broke her femur. She had surgery the next day. She was in the hospital for a couple weeks and rehab for a couple weeks, and now she's at a nursing home. And she's health-wise she's doing fine. But now obviously with the pandemic and all of that, like we can't go see her. She's still in the nursing home. And so it is. And,
sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, it's all of these things like happened in a row, and and I had this thought the other day because I saw the Sam Elliott Doritos commercial, the Cool Ranch Doritos commercial that debuted on the Super Bowl, and I was like, how the Super Bowl feels like it was a year and a half ago. You know what I mean?
It sure does.
It feels
Groundhog
so
Day is real, man.
It feels so long ago, but it was really only a couple of months. It was like a little over 3 months ago. But in a weird way, it also feels like it was yesterday. Like the concept of time has really gotten like very skewed. But I definitely understand like what you mean by the ability to slow down, because my wife and I and we don't have kids, but we were on the run a lot, and I did 1 or 2 podcasts a week, and then Friday nights we'd go out to dinner, go to the grocery store. Saturday we were usually running around. Sunday we're usually running around. And like it just always seems like you get into this rush of, okay, the week's over now. We have 2 busy days of weekend, and then and it just lather, rinse, repeat, and it goes through and it goes through and it goes through, and you're like, there's never enough time for this. There's never enough time for this, and now all of us, you're going, wow, there's time for a lot of things, and yeah, like the things in the last couple of months. And I think you said a great word, prioritize. Like in the last couple of months, I've been able to do a lot of thinking and like kind of mental inventory of things in my life that I do, that I have looked at as important, that really are not important, or should not be anywhere near the top of the list. And I start to go like, man, like. I think I said after about a couple of weeks, so it was probably like late March, beginning of April, I was like, if I could cure a disease with life lessons, this thing would be done 10 times over. And that was after a couple of weeks, because it was, real quick. And it's just the way my brain is. Like, I've dealt with like anxiety and different things. And I've gone through counseling for over a decade. and my brain has to like compartmentalize things and put things in places, and I work through things in my mind a lot. So when you have nothing but time, that tends to be something that happens. And for me, it was like, wow, whenever we get out of this, the way that things are going to change for me, in terms of priority. Again, I think that's the perfect word probably for all of this. Is unbelievably different than it was before.
I'm not sure about how your regular day job, how it works with you. Like, I don't know if you work from home or whatever, but I know for me, I haven't worked now. This is now week 10. Now, supposedly we're getting close to going back to work soon, supposedly. But we go from the rat race, of gotta make money, gotta feed the kids, gotta do this, pay bills, all that, and whatever. To now just pause, and it's so strange. Like, and I know we're starting to open up things a little bit now in certain states, whatever. Like, on one hand, I'm happy about that. On the other hand, I'm kind of have some anxiety about that because, like, not only because of the risks involved, but also I haven't worked in a long time, so I kind of feel like a new person in a lot of ways now, going back to the regular life that we had only 10 weeks ago. It's weird. It's really weird, but
yeah, it's like the amount of change that the majority of people, because obviously there's people that work in various industries, be it obviously like medical workers and first responders and things like that are out there putting their life on the line every day, but like, and I'm not saying because people that work in grocery stores, people that work at gas stations, people that drive truck, and people that work in food service, those are all obviously very essential people, and are putting their lives out there as well. For a lot of them, life doesn't look or feel a lot different. For most of us though, life has been dramatically changed. So we've been able to go, okay, I am a new person. I'm a different person because, the things that we've gone through in the last couple of months, and the things that, that go through our mind as businesses and states and counties and facilities and whatever begin to reopen, it does obviously, we have a different outlook on it than we probably did before. So yeah, it is a really interesting thing, and
right. You know what it is too, also Jim, is that it's going to sound really strange because everybody has a different perspective on the social situation, different lifestyle, different this or that. I've been saying this on my podcast over and over, and the people that I talk to on a regular basis, I haven't necessarily hated this either. I've actually sort of enjoyed being able to slow down and just relax. It's weird. Like, my only fear is that I don't want to get too used to it because I know I have to go back to work some point and I have to get back to, raising my family and paying bills and all that. But I haven't necessarily hated it either. That's the strange part.
I think I understand what you mean, and in a way, I kind of I get it.
I feel guilty. I feel guilty to feel that way too sometimes.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think and maybe my interpretation of it, or maybe it's because I've kind of had the same thought as well. Is like, obviously we don't want we don't want this disease to be here. Like, if we could, I think if even the people that are kind of saying this hasn't been awful because we've been able to spend time with family, we've been able to slow down our lives, and we've been able to cut back on maybe some of the stresses that were getting us before. Because, like, even if you're out and you're doing things constantly, you're constantly on the run, in a way it is kind of stressful, because it's like, okay, well, I wanted to be at the grocery store by 2:00 today, and I wanted to be here by this time, and if you don't get there by those times, or if there's traffic or if there's a wreck, like, sometimes it can derail your day. So maybe in the aftermath of all of this, like, pandemic and quarantine and all of that, we won't get as angry at traffic. We won't get as angry at, if the case of water that we wanted at the grocery store wasn't there or wasn't in stock or whatever. So yeah, I kind of understand what you mean by like you don't hate it because you've been able to slow down and somewhat simplify your life. So like the challenge, I think going beyond this is being able to take the things that we've learned in these couple of months and apply them to when life resumes in whatever fashion it is, because even as things begin to like reopen and as sports begin to come back and stuff like that, like it is going to be gradual. Like I don't think we're going to wake up on June 13th and the world is going to look exactly like it did on March 1st of this year or June 13th of last year. Like it's just not going to be that way. Like it is going to be a while till things look what we remember
Which is
as
a good
normal.
thing too, also mentally, because I think for us to go from being normal life and hectic to full stoppage to back to normal life and hectic, that's not healthy. You want to grow back slowly and
Yes.
see what the world looks like today. And it's gonna be a new world, man. I hate saying this because people hate it, the new normal, but it really is gonna be a new normal to some degree.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, and yeah, people I think get annoyed by the cliches that get thrown out there, but I mean, people can try and change up the phrasing however they want, but I mean, the reality of the fact is,
Exactly.
before 9/11 and after 9/11 are different worlds, and so before COVID-19. After COVID-19 are going to be different worlds. There's no way around it. Like, because, there's at least going to be a sector of the population, even 2 years from now, when this is such an afterthought, hopefully. And if you're somebody that goes like, every so often you have a Facebook memory pop up and you'll go, oh my God, that was such a weird year. But like,
Yeah.
There's going to be a sector of the population, and I assume it's probably going to be a fairly large one, that is going to take things and look at things differently from now on. Maybe they're going to not shake hands anymore. Maybe they're always going to have like hand sanitizer in their back pocket, or I don't know. I don't know exactly to the level that everybody's going to do it, but it's going to be different. It is going to be marked difference in life, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because again, pre 9/11, post 9/11, it's the same thing. So like, for people who were old enough to remember life before 9/11 and after, and now go through this, like I remember on 9/11, a lot of people said that like my generation, I'll be 35 in a month and a half. And a lot of people were like, your generation's never had anything really bad happen. And to be honest, we didn't. So, we didn't have Kennedy being shot. There wasn't like a major wars. There wasn't like a noticeably huge like economic thing or anything like that. And then all of a sudden 9/11 happened and life got real. Like I was a junior in high school, life got real.
It's funny because I'm 40, you're 30, 35, so we're pretty close to this, in the same time frame of age, whatever. We've had 9/11 happen in 2001. We had the crisis in 2008, and now we have this.
Yeah.
A lot's happened in the last 20 years.
Sure.
It's so strange. And when we were raised, between 80 and 2000, it's nothing. It's been pretty much smooth, I would say, in terms of the larger scale events. Would be.
Yeah, I mean, like you had conflicts, for
Right.
in different things at times, but there wasn't anything, that the history books don't write like that 20-year period as anything that was, monumental and earth changing. Yeah, we've had a few of those in the last 20.
Right.
I've jokingly said like to friends of mine and to my wife, like we've gone on walks and things like that. I'm like, I've jokingly said that this is the reason all of this is happening is so that years from now, dads can't use on their kids the dad joke about having 20/20 vision. Like this is just nature's way of preventing bad dad jokes. 10, 15, 20 years from now. But in the same time, one of those will still be out there because, as people our age and a little bit younger, when they start, when they have more kids or whatever, or grandkids, if they hear somebody complain about something minuscule, like, today was the worst day. I ran out of gas on the way to work. You can go, well, hindsight is 20/20. It's not that bad. So there's still there's a free one for you. You have kids. There's a free one for you.
I'm gonna use on my kids and my grandkids when I get older.
Perfect. So yeah, let's talk about sports and because obviously things have been shut down, but we're beginning to kind of begin to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, last month we had the NFL draft, which was, I never even really watched the draft, and I was fascinated by it because it was something of a distraction. I've been watching wrestling every week. That hasn't changed, but it's been a distraction. This past weekend, we had the return of live sports in the United States. Of course, we had the driving relief with Rory and Dustin Johnson and Ricky Fowler, and I forget the fourth golfer, but you had that on Sunday. You had NASCAR return on Sunday. I never really watched NASCAR, and I watched some NASCAR. And of course, this weekend we have the match between Tiger and Peyton Manning against Phil and Tom Brady. That's on Sunday at 3. NASCAR, they have a fairly full schedule over the next couple weeks. So live sports are starting to come back. The NBA is still kicking around ideas. The NHL, the reports change on a seemingly an hourly basis for the National Hockey League. But if the news from yesterday and today is true, it seems like they're working on getting closer to ending the regular season and a 24-team playoff. 12 from each conference that will determine the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we're getting there, and I know, like, when you said it, like that you almost seem to miss sports a little more now than you did initially, and I think I'm probably similar in the same boat, just because what seemed so scary and foreign to us and just unbelievable 2 months ago has become like a normal-ish. And I'm not saying that what the life that we're living right now is normal, but we've gotten into the routine of, okay, we're at home. If it's nice out, we're going to go for a walk after work. You go to a grocery store once a week. Got to drive the car around to make sure the battery doesn't die or whatever. And obviously different people are living different ways, but for us, we've been abiding about as strictly as possible to the stay-at-home orders. So that's been life for us, and that's been what has become normal right now. So, like, as this is how we live, then you kind of go, man, I miss, it's the middle of May. I miss the Stanley Cup playoffs. I miss Major League Baseball. I miss this. So I think for me, it has kind of resonated a little bit as well, more than it did like a month or, 2 months ago.
Yeah. We're starting to see a little bit of peel back on the curtain now. Like I said, you said the NBA, NHL, it's starting to figure things out, I guess, in terms of where to go next. I personally think right now at this point, cancel seasons, come back when it's safe in November, October when it starts. I don't know. It's just I don't know. My brain is it's just so weird. Because like 10 years ago, 30-year-old me be like, fuck it, let's just bring back everything back. Let's bring everything, let's do this. We'll get that normal. But the reality is that this virus, we don't know. I mean, it's obviously very serious. Mm-hmm. I don't want to take any extremes positions on on returning back to normal versus locking down completely. But sports should be probably the last thing on our minds in terms of, priorities, although, I mean, it is a business. I get that. It's your job at hand, but is it safe to open up to the point where you're having 80,000 people in the stadium, in September? Is it, or even for NBA, NHL, fans who watch those sports, in an arena, 20,000 fans? Is it safe to do that yet? My answer would be no. So I'm more leaning on the cautious side of things with sports, and hopefully works out by the end of the summer.
Yeah, and that's like been the hard debate is people are like and I've seen different sports radio hosts and things going, well, hosts have polls and ask questions, if would you go to an NFL game this fall, or if the NHL return, like for me, and I'm a person that I almost compare it somewhat to Ben Stiller's character in Along Came Polly. Like I feel like I assess risk at all times in my life. Like if I'm going through things, if I'm in a crowded room, like I find the exit. If things like that. So like I don't take a lot of like unnecessary risks. So like, for me, the question was like, would you go to an NFL game this fall? Yeah, probably not.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't. I'm with you.
And
the thing too, also, when we were looking at things that like about, okay, we want sports back. Ask yourself the question: would you go to a game right now with the risk? I wouldn't go to the game. Now, maybe the person next to me, I ask, may say yes. That's fine. That's their opinion. They can do that. But I personally think that we should be as cautious as possible. Let's do a slow roll, slow build, and get to the point. Because I'm scared that we may have another situation that we do this again later in the year.
Yeah. Like that's the big fear, and it's something that from a sports standpoint, from a personal standpoint, that it's something to watch because there's been some states that have been reopened for a couple of weeks now, and numbers still seem to be pretty good, which is an encouraging sign. Like, but in the same time, there's been others where things have spiked, and it's going, so it's. I think you have to be very calculated. I think everybody in every industry, in every state, in every local government, federal government, all of it, like. Politics aside, everybody has to be smart about the steps that we have to take to go back to, regular life or anything like that. And yeah,
right.
and I think there are sports that can be done safely and make quote unquote make sense without crowds, like golf, for example. Like the PGA Tour resumes in 3 weeks. We saw a small sampling, this past weekend. We'll see another one this coming weekend of what golf can look like without spectators. It's not that much different. And in fact, for me as a golfer, like I actually really enjoyed the looks of a golf course without grandstands on them, because that's the look that I have when I play a golf course. Like when I play a golf course, there's not people sitting around the green in these large bleacher setups. It's just me in the course. So seeing that and seeing professional golfers play on that type of a setup was pretty damn cool. Like NASCAR, again, you can do that fairly safely. The teams, everybody's wearing masks in pit row, and the drivers are by themselves in a car. So, but when you start getting down to the NBA, when you get down to the NHL, and as we progress towards football season, we've seen the Korean baseball on ESPN, like, and how they're doing it very different. It's very different than the baseball we're used to seeing. And we saw some soccer this past weekend as well. Like, things look very different. They feel very different. I have very mixed feelings about the return of sports that you can't do from a distance, because but in the same time, I've been watching wrestling for the last 2.5 months in empty buildings, and obviously you can't much social distance with professional wrestling. So it's really in sports and everything. It's this hard balance of what risk do you take, what risk do you don't. Like, no matter what comes back, I don't think we're going to see full stadiums, full arenas. Like the NFL, if anything, you might see 10,000 people in the stands. You know, college football, you might see, 10,000 people at Alabama Stadium and at Neyland Stadium in Tennessee. Like you're probably not going to get 100,000 people in a college football stadium this fall. It'll look very different. But my biggest thing is, will it be safe for the student athletes? Will it be safe for the players in the NFL and the other leagues that are going to be back? And if they can do it, then I say maybe give it a shot. But you have to. I think everybody has to be very, very smart and calculated about how things come back.
Right, and my position on this is more so from the sports that draw fans, like in arenas and whatnot. Like golf, obviously you can do golf without having people there. You can do baseball pretty much without having people there. The way their sport's set up as it is, you can social distance easily. I'm talking about football and basketball where you have to be around people to be effective. And that's the risk there too. And I don't know. Like I want to say the extremes on the position there, but I want my position is safety first.
Yeah,
safety.
100%. 100%. And really kind of one of like the last thoughts that I have, because I think everybody's kind of seen the progression of everything and how everything is shut down, and they've been able to assess to themselves like how much they miss sports and stuff like that. When sports resume and like, obviously like golf, somewhat of a niche sport, NASCAR, a niche sport, but as Major League Baseball, which looks like it's inching towards returning sometime July, August, shortened season. The NHL, the NBA may or not come back July or August, bump back the start of next year. And then of course, football in the fall. The question is like, and again, I go back to that word priority. How in this quote unquote whole new world will you, EJ Christian, how will you prioritize sports when things begin to go back? And not even just now, like, in a couple of months as they kick back, but, maybe try and crystal ball it. Maybe look, 6 months, a year from now, are you going to prioritize sports? And I know you had said that, that when Kobe passed, it kind of started changing things for you already. But now going on, will you prioritize sports even differently post COVID-19?
Yeah, I think I think it's forever. I think it would prioritize even if we didn't have COVID-19. I just think, in my case anyway, I mean, my situation is different. I have a family and whatnot, so by nature, it doesn't change anyway because of the priorities. I can't, if the kids have to go to do a project done or this and that comes before watching the Heat game. I'm sorry.
Sure.
This is the bottom line. But I do think initially when it comes back, I'll be fired up. But I think again, I'm going to find a balance. I think I'm going to find a nice little balance. And that's not to say I'm not going to watch sports more, because I mean, I do a show that a good portion of my material is all in the world of sports. So I'm not going to obviously not do it anymore. But it's going to be more. I think my mindset now as a human being these days is more so balance and just kind of variety, if you will. You know what I mean? And it's funny too, also because the other thing that's also taking sports a little bit away from me too in the last year is my return to watching wrestling last year.
Mm-hmm.
I came back after 17 years last June, and I'm back. Like, I'm back to the point I have my whole wrestling podcast now too on top of that. So even wrestling now is sharing space now, sharing real estate with me with sports and politics and family and marriage and all that stuff. And I love wrestling. So although I will say I don't know if you go through the same thing as I am, but I have a hard time watching Raw and SmackDown. And even NXT to some degree, week to week, the last couple weeks. Not a problem with AEW. Although I've fallen behind AEW a little bit, I've caught back up. You know what I mean? But The no crowd thing is kind of hard to watch, at least on the WWE side.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I've watched most weeks of Raw. Wednesday nights, I the last few weeks I've kind of caught them the same night. Otherwise, I'll just kind of follow up. SmackDown's been hit or miss. Once they moved to Friday nights, it did kind of become hit or miss. Because that was a night that we're usually doing stuff. We go out to dinner. We go to the grocery store. Sometimes we hang out with friends. Like, I'm not gonna shelve things that are normal just to catch Friday night SmackDown. So SmackDown was always a different bit of a watch. But I've still been watching it, and the funny thing now is I was saying on 3 Count last week that because I had missed AEW for a few weeks, and I forgot that they had some of the like wrestlers at ringside that to give somewhat of a crowd feel to it, and like because I've gotten so used to WWE with nothing. Like hearing the wrestlers at ringside was almost like a distraction for me at first. So like because I've gotten so used to the empty arena thing. So and I think for me and probably for you too, and anybody that's been watching wrestling, the blow, if you will, of having no crowds isn't going to be as great for us when sports resume. Because I know, like I saw a lot of people when UFC had their fight last weekend were going, man, this is so weird without a crowd. It's so weird without a crowd. And I'm going, dude, this is old hat for me at this point.
Yeah. I had to watch a freaking 2-day WrestleMania with no crowd.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, dude, this is nothing new for me. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, like talking about how you will.
Although I will say though, Jim, I don't want to sit and compare, promotions here. Mm-hmm. But AEW has done it correctly. AEW has just been on the ball with this. I mean, and they're doing with limited roster too, in fact. But especially the last couple shows, last 2-3 shows, they last week, Wednesday, and the week before, they've hit them out of the park, really, in terms of the content. Like it's as though you forgot there's no crowd there. Like I know they have the obviously the wrestlers on the ringside, but it's kind of helping. It's kind of helping. It's on my end.
Yeah, I honestly I think the last couple weeks on both sides on both promotions, I think everybody's starting to find their stride a bit. Yeah. With the empty arena thing. Like AEW, yeah, they've been doing really, really well. But I think WWE has put some of their best weeks of empty arena era content together in the last couple weeks. Like I think both companies are hitting their strides. They're doing it in different ways. The debate's always going to be there. Like if the WWE should do the AEW thing and have a couple of guys at ringside. If you believe reports, Vince doesn't want to do it. So I don't see it happening anytime soon. But like, I think both companies have really started to excel a bit with the empty arena shows and in different ways and in very different ways. But yeah. In terms of the like prioritizing sports, like, I know for me, like there would be times when, if like the Caps were playing on a Monday night, like my mom or something would text me and like, hey, do you guys want to come over for dinner? Or do you want to do? And I'm like, oh, hockey's on tonight. And I think now with being able to step back a bit and look at things, coming out of this, there's 82 NHL games in a season. So
not only that, you have DVR anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, I've never been good at like DVRing sports and like keeping myself from checking the score. So like for me, it's always a write-off. So it's like, am I going to miss this? But there's 82 games in a season. So, I could probably miss a Caps Islanders game on a Monday night in February to go have dinner with my mom or something like that. Like there's certain games that I probably would say, hey, can we at least put this on if I come over? Like if it's a Caps Penguins, Caps Flyers, something like that. But yeah, I think, if you ever talk to my wife and anybody, a lot of people that listen to this know me, know my wife. I tend to take sports far too seriously at times. Coming out of this, I would tend to think or hope that maybe I won't take it as seriously as I did before, because it can. First off, it can obviously, now we know it can be taken away at the drop of a hat,
Right.
but also, when you look at, for years everybody thought like athletes and actors and things like that were the most important people in society. And now, and people who work at grocery stores and gas stations and things like that are not that important. When now all of a sudden, when shit hits the fan, you begin to realize who's really more important in a society, who's really, who's really a hero, a role model, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying that sports and athletes and actors and TV shows and entertainment are not important, because it's not true. Entertainment is super important. The ability to put on a Netflix show and check out of the world is great. Like Sunday, my wife and I sat down and we watched Zombieland 2, and like just to kick back and watch a movie and laugh and whatever for a couple of hours is so important. And it's like back at the beginning, like for WrestleMania, that was less than a month into everything going on. For 2 nights, for a couple hours each night, like I was able to forget about all the other shit in the world. That is very important. Like the ability to do that is very important. But in the broad picture,
it's also WrestleMania for me. Was special for me this year because it was the first time I actually watched it with my family. Like my son's now a big fan. Now, granted, we gotta balance him out because he gets upset sometimes to the point where you have to watch a couple things because this is too much. But that being said, watching WrestleMania with both my kids, 7 and 3 years old, and my wife, who's not even a fan, but she was willing to watch it during both nights, and she enjoyed it.
Hey.
That was, even though we didn't have the crowds, though, it was so special for me to do that. First time I ever did that with my family. It was really great, actually.
Hey, my wife, who I've jokingly said we've been together like over 10 years. I've jokingly said for years with like my best friends, my wrestling crew, that I'd get her to be a fan. I don't think I'm ever going to get her to be a fan, but like she watched most of WrestleMania with me. Like she hangs in there, like when Raw's on or whatever, before she goes to bed. Like she like hangs out. Like it's not like wrestling comes on and she walks away, because it used to be that way. So like again, obviously I don't have kids, but like that's pretty cool. That like your kids getting into it, your family's getting into it. Like having people to like watch stuff with you is super cool. Like I know before Money in the Bank last weekend, because if nothing else, Ryan, one of my co-hosts, 3 Count Thursday, would come over to our house for pay-per-views, and my wife's like, man, I just miss Ryan coming over for pay-per-views. And it's like, it just like, again, I think it's those little things, because that really are crazy. Like I had a friend of mine that stopped over to the house, and like, we just sat in my front yard, socially distanced, over 6 feet apart, and just hung out for a little bit. My dad dropped by for the other day, and like we talked in the front yard. Like my mom has stopped by, we talked in the front yard. Like those are the moments that like through all of this, I'm like, wow, like that has made me feel so good when I can talk to my friends and talk to my family in person. Like we've done Zoom calls with friends and family, and like and yeah, like I love sports. I'm always gonna love sports, and I can't wait for the Capitals to be back on my TV, or for Notre Dame football to be back on my TV, or the Cowboys to be back on my TV. But in the same time, it's like sitting here right now, it's like, if you ask me, would I rather, sit at a dinner table or sit around a campfire with my friends and family, or watch a hockey game on TV, I'm taking friends and family 11 times out of 10 right now.
Of course, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, and before, if you would have asked me that last summer, like, what would you rather do tonight? Sit around a campfire with your friends, or watch the Caps? And I'd go, who we playing? Is it the playoffs? What, how crucial is it? Like, if it's early season game, I could probably say, like, I would start to do that, like, mental math thing without hesitation. Like I would 110% take friends and family at this point. And like that's the thing that I hope that I never lose coming out of this. Like, as we're beginning to like wrap up thoughts, like if because eventually we got past 9/11 and we weren't always like looking to the sky or waiting for the bad news on the TV. So like eventually we're going to get to that point with this stuff. Cause like, even if it does take, 18 months or 24 months for there to be a vaccine that works and we can all take the vaccine and we don't have to worry about this disease anymore. For those of us that take the vaccine, like, so 2.5 years from now, we're not going to always be worried about like, when somebody coughs or sniffles in a grocery store. But like the thing that I hope I don't lose is this perspective of family and friends are by far more important than this sporting event. And like doing stuff with people you care about is more important than sitting alone and watching an event on TV, or like, your favorite team losing a playoff series probably isn't something to get like just absolutely gutted about, because I can wake up tomorrow and I can go visit my mom or my dad, or my wife and I can go to the park and and go out to lunch and have a day together. That's the stuff that's more important.
25-year-old me is saying, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I get it. My 25-year-old me would have been the same way.
Yeah, that's changed, man. That's changed. And again, it's about. I'm not going to sit there and tell people like you should just do what we do or what I do, whatever. It's just my perspective. Like, again, people ask me questions about, are you a sports? I'm like, no, and that's why. And what you're saying is exactly what I'm saying to everybody else too. It's just the priorities are changed now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Hey, EJ, any more thoughts on anything? If not, then I'll give you an opportunity here to plug your shows and let people.
Well, no, really, nothing. That's about it. I really appreciate being on the show. Number one, number two, I love your content. I love 3 Times Thursday, especially. I listen to every week religiously. You guys are amazing. I love the honesty. I like it's 2-hour show, and it feels like it's not enough.
Oh, we appreciate that.
So I really enjoy. I'm looking forward to a new podcast too, especially as well.
Yeah, the new show, Discussions with a Nobody, like. It just the amount of different ideas that have come through my head with the downtime has spurred a lot of cool ideas, and I have a lot of cool ideas with that, and one that I'm definitely going to need. I'm definitely going to need your help on, because it's
you know I'm here. You know me, Mr. Podcaster. I love this. That's one of the things I'm so like. I have this like minimalism lifestyle I have now. I don't have a lot of things I care for anymore. Like, I have my family, I have certain things I prioritize, but the one thing one hobby I do love, and it's more than a hobby obviously at this point, but podcasting is something I'm very passionate about. The same way I was when I was playing music 10, 15 years ago in a band, the same way I treat a podcast. And so of course, anybody wants to ask questions about, ideas, whatever, I'm more than willing to share, definitely.
All right, yeah. Why don't you give yourself a plug here? Let people know where they can follow you, Twitter, Facebook, all of that, where they can find your shows, and
right.
And we're gonna get going.
I'm on Twitter, EJChristian7. My blog, theearnestchristian.com. So I'm all my podcasts, Ernest Speaking Podcast, Tasty Wrestling Podcast. I have a podcast with my wife I do called That's So Christian. It's the perspective of a husband and wife. We do that probably once a month or once every 2 weeks, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's about it, man. Again, Big Jim, thank you so much for having me on your show. Had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon here, there, and everywhere.
Yes, sir.
All right, see you, bud. Again, thank you to Ernest Christian for joining us this week. Again, I know the Huddle Up, we've been kind of silent, and we're coming up with ideas. We're thinking of things to bring you some content, and we will announce those. Again, Facebook and Twitter are both at Huddle Up Podcast. You can find me at Big Jim Sports on Twitter. Make sure you check out our home network, NGSC Sports, at ngscsports.com. Also streaming at leibsports.com, LEEIB sports.com. And make sure you're subscribed on all your podcatchers. Again, Spotify as well. And until the next time we talk to you, stay safe. Please stay safe. Please stay smart. And wash your hands. And we'll talk to you again next time. Until then, go for the win.